You think you're entitled to loyalty because you showed up. You think presence is the same as devotion. You think because you said the words, you earned the trust. And that right there is why you're losing everything that matters while convincing yourself you're doing enough. Let me tell you something that won't sit well with most of you listening right now. Women don't love harder because they're weaker. They love harder because they decided you were worth the risk before you proved you deserved it. They love the man you could become while you were still content being the man you were. And the betrayal doesn't come from some grand villain entering the story. The betrayal comes from you choosing comfort over character every single day until she realizes the man she fell in love with was never actually there. This isn't about relationships. This is about what you do when nobody's watching. This is about whether your word means something when it costs you something. This is about the gap between who you pretend to be and who you actually are when the door closes and the audience leaves. Most men live in that gap. They perform integrity. They rehearse commitment. They talk about loyalty like it's a philosophy instead of a daily decision that requires sacrifice. And then they wonder why the woman who gave everything walks away with nothing but exhaustion and a lesson she'll never forget. Here's what nobody wants to hear. You weren't betrayed by her leaving. She was betrayed by you staying the same. She was betrayed by your potential that never turned into progress. She was betrayed by promises you made with your mouth that your actions never honored. She was betrayed by the future you sold her while you remained dedicated to your comfort. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking about exceptions. You're thinking about the women who left good men. You're thinking about your situation and how it's different. Stop. That reflex right there, that immediate need to defend yourself, to find the loophole, to explain why you're not the problem, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's the voice of a man who's more committed to being right than being better. Women love harder because they love with their whole identity. When a woman decides you're her man, she doesn't just add you to her life. She reorganizes her entire existence around the life you're building together. She dreams in plural. She plans in partnership. She sacrifices in silence because she believes the vision is worth the cost. And what do most men do with that gift? They take it for granted. They confuse her loyalty with guarantee. They stop earning what she's already given. You want to know why betrayal finds her first? Because she's already all in while you're still keeping options. She's already building while you're still browsing. She's already committed while you're still comfortable. And the moment something easier, shinier, or more exciting shows up, the moment the work gets hard, the moment she needs you to be more than you feel like being, you fold, not dramatically, not with an announcement. You fold quietly. In the small things, in the lazy responses, in the declining effort, in the growing distance, you pretend not to notice. This is the part where discipline matters more than desire. Feelings fade, attraction fluctuates, emotions are weather, not climate. If your commitment is based on how you feel, you're already finished. You just haven't admitted it yet. Real commitment is what you do on the days you don't feel like doing it. Real love is the decision you make when the feeling isn't there to carry you. That's when character shows up. That's when you find out if you're a man of your word or just a man of your mood. And let me be clear about something. I'm not talking about tolerating disrespect. I'm not talking about sacrificing your dignity for someone else's dysfunction. I'm talking about the daily, unsexy, unglamorous work of being consistent. I'm talking about showing up when it's boring. I'm talking about keeping your word when it's inconvenient. I'm talking about building something that matters more than your momentary comfort. Most of you are waiting for a feeling to motivate the action. You're waiting to feel like being faithful. You're waiting to feel like being present. You're waiting to feel like growing up. And while you're waiting, she's exhausting herself trying to love both who you are and who you promised you'd become. Eventually, she stops waiting, not because she stopped loving you, but because she finally started loving herself enough to stop accepting your potential as payment for her presence. The betrayal is not what you did. The betrayal is what you didn't do. It's the conversations you avoided, the growth you postponed, the responsibility you dodged, the hard truths you ignored, the small promises you broke because they felt small, the standards you lowered because discipline felt like punishment. The man you could have been if you cared more about your word than your comfort. You were created with purpose, not by accident, not randomly. There's a reason you're breathing. There's a reason you have the capacity to love, to build, to protect, to lead. But purpose without discipline is just potential, and potential without action is just pain. You can have all the gifts in the world and waste every single one of them by choosing ease over excellence every single day. Here's what I know about the men listening who actually feel this. You know exactly where you've been lazy. You know exactly where you've cut corners. You know exactly where your words and your actions don't match. and you've been negotiating with that truth for so long, you've convinced yourself the gap doesn't matter. But it does matter. It matters to her. It matters to your future. It matters to the man you see in the mirror when nobody else is looking. Women love harder because they're willing to feel everything. They don't numb themselves. They don't hide behind logic when emotions get uncomfortable. They lean into the fear, the hope, the uncertainty, the risk. They love with their eyes open, knowing it might destroy them. And what do most men do? They protect themselves. They hedge. They keep one foot out the door just in case. They love with conditions they never say out loud. And then they're shocked when she finally sees through the performance. Let me tell you something about trust. Trust is not built in moments. Trust is built in patterns. It's built in the 100 small decisions she watches you make when you think she's not paying attention. It's built in your consistency when life gets messy. It's built in what you do when you're tired, frustrated, or tempted. She's not testing you. She's watching to see if you're the same man in private that you claim to be in public. And most men fail that test every single day, not because they're evil, not because they don't care, but because they're weak, because discipline feels like deprivation, because sacrifice feels like loss, because doing the right thing when it costs you something feels like punishment instead of proof. You want to be trusted? Be trustworthy, not just in the big moments, in the moments that don't seem to count, in the moments nobody will know about, in the moments where the easier path is right there and nobody would blame you for taking it. That's where your character lives. That's where she decides if you're real or if you're just another man who talked a good game until it required something from him. I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm here to wake you up. Because the life you're living right now, the man you're being right now, if nothing changes, this is it. This is your ceiling. This is your legacy. This is what you'll be remembered for. A man who had everything he needed to become someone worth remembering and chose comfort instead. Women get betrayed first because they invested first. They believed first. They sacrificed first. And you showed up with half your heart and expected full credit. You gave 20% effort and demanded 100% loyalty. You changed when you felt like it and expected her to accept you exactly as you are. And now you're sitting here confused about why it fell apart. It fell apart because you never built it. She built it. She carried it. She fought for it. And you enjoyed it. You benefited from her strength while contributing your weakness. You leaned on her faith while doubting the work. You consumed her energy while protecting your own. And you called that partnership. That's not partnership. That's parasitic. And the moment she wakes up to that reality, the moment she sees clearly what she's been refusing to see, it's over. Not because she's giving up, but because she's finally choosing herself over the fantasy of who you might become if she just loves you hard enough. Here's the truth you don't want to face. You can't love someone into changing. You can't sacrifice someone into growth. You can't exhaust yourself into their potential. Every person has to choose their own transformation. Every person has to decide that who they are is no longer acceptable. And until a man decides that for himself, no amount of love from her will make the difference. So the question isn't why women love harder. The question is, why do men love so lazily? Why do men treat commitment like a checkbox instead of a daily choice? Why do men confuse not leaving with actually staying? Why do men think showing up physically means they're present emotionally? Because it's easier. Because lazy love still gets you most of the benefits without any of the cost. Because you can coast on her effort and call it teamwork. Because you can blame her standards when you fail to meet them. Because you can call her expectations unrealistic when you're unwilling to grow into them. But let me tell you what happens to men like that. They lose everything that matters while holding on to everything that doesn't. They end up comfortable and alone. They end up right and regretful. They end up with proof they weren't the problem and nobody to share their life with. They win the argument and lose the relationship. And years later, when they finally grow up, when they finally become the man they should have been, they realize exactly what they lost and exactly why they lost it. And by then it's too late, not because she's cruel, not because she holds grudges, but because she's moved on to a man who didn't need a decade and a divorce to figure out what she deserved from the beginning. Time doesn't wait for you to get serious. Life doesn't pause while you figure yourself out. The people who love you don't have unlimited patience for your unlimited excuses. At some point, potential expires. At some point, tomorrow becomes never. At some point, she stops believing your promises because your patterns told the truth. This is your life right now. These are your choices right now. This is who you are right now. And if that's not good enough, If that's not the man you want to be, then decide today that you're done being him. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances align. Today, right now, this moment. Decide that the gap between your words and your actions ends today. Decide that you're going to be the same man in private that you claim to be in public. Decide that your commitment means something even on the days you don't feel like honoring it. Decide that her trust in you will never be betrayed by your comfort, your laziness, or your cowardice. Decide that you're going to build something real instead of performing something fake. Because here's what I know about the men who actually change. They get tired of their own excuses before anyone else does. They get disgusted with their own patterns before she walks away. They wake up to the gap between who they are and who they're capable of being, and they close it, not because someone forced them, but because they couldn't live with themselves if they didn't. That's the man she fell in love with. That's the man she's been waiting for. That's the man you promised you'd be. And every day you choose comfort over that promise, you betray not just her, but yourself. You betray your purpose. You betray your potential. You betray the life you could be living if you had the courage to stop negotiating with mediocrity. Women love harder because they know what's at stake. They know that real love requires real sacrifice. They know that building something that lasts means showing up when it's hard. They know that trust is earned in 1,000 small moments, not granted in one grand gesture. And they're willing to do that work. The question is, are you? Are you willing to be inconvenienced by your own integrity? Are you willing to sacrifice your comfort for your commitments? Are you willing to become the man your word says you are even when nobody's checking? Are you willing to love her with the same intensity and consistency she loves you? Or are you going to keep coasting, keep performing, keep expecting her strength to compensate for your weakness? Keep thinking that not leaving is the same as actually staying? Keep waiting for her to lower her standards instead of raising yourself to meet them? Because I'll tell you what happens if you choose the latter. She leaves. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but eventually she leaves. Not with anger, not with drama. She leaves quietly, with exhaustion, with clarity, with the kind of peace that comes from finally choosing yourself over someone else's potential. And you'll sit there confused. You'll tell yourself she changed. You'll say she gave up too easily. You'll blame her for not being patient enough. You'll convince yourself you were doing your best. And all of it will be a lie, a comfortable lie, but a lie nonetheless. The truth is, she didn't change. She woke up. She didn't give up too easily. She held on too long. She wasn't impatient. She was exhausted from carrying what you refused to lift. And you weren't doing your best. You were doing what felt easy and calling it enough. So here's my challenge to you. Stop talking. Stop explaining. Stop defending. Stop performing. Just start doing the work. Start being the man you claim to be. Start honoring your word even when it costs you. Start showing up with the same energy she shows up with. Start loving with intention instead of convenience. And if you can't do that, if you're not willing to do that, then have the decency to let her go. Have the courage to admit you're not ready. Have the integrity to stop wasting her time while you figure out if you feel like growing up. Because she deserves better than your maybe. She deserves better than your potential. She deserves better than the man you might become if she just sacrifices enough. She deserves the man who chose to become that person not because she begged him to, but because he couldn't respect himself if he didn't. She deserves the man who understands that love is a decision, not a feeling. She deserves the man who knows that betrayal isn't just what you do, but what you fail to do. Be that man, not for her, for you. Because at the end of your life, when you look back at the choices you made, the people you loved, the legacy you left, you won't remember the comfort you chose. You'll remember what you built. You'll remember who you became. You'll remember whether your word meant something or whether it was just noise. And I promise you this, the man who chose discipline over comfort, who chose integrity over ease, who chose to be worthy of the love he received, that man sleeps well. That man looks himself in the mirror with respect. That man builds something real. That man doesn't lose the woman who loved him because he never gave her a reason to leave. That's the man you were created to be. Not perfect, not flawless, but committed, consistent, present, real. A man whose actions match his words. A man whose love is proven in discipline, not declared in promises. A man who understands that the greatest betrayal is not what you did to her, but what you failed to become for yourself. The choice is yours. The time is now. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting to feel ready. You'll never feel ready. You'll never have enough information. You'll never have perfect circumstances. What you have is this moment, this decision, this opportunity to close the gap between who you are and who you're capable of being. Take it, or spend the rest of your life explaining to yourself why you didn't.